Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. I know we're like right in the midst of lunchtime, so I think people will start to trickle in. Welcome to our 10th annual Startup Showcase. We wanted to give a special thank you to CGMP Consulting for sponsoring the session. So please join me in welcoming Kevin Lindy, from the CEO of CGMP, to give a quick intro.
Thanks, Marwa, and welcome to the Startup Showcase. I am Kevin Lindy. I'm the CEO and founder of CGMP Consulting. Our company was founded in 2001, so I know some of the triumphs and struggles of leading a startup company. CGMP Consulting is an engineering and regulatory firm, and we focus on FDA-regulated industries. So we have a lot of pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device, and then it sort of trails off into dietary supplements, cosmetics, food, and others. Our clients range from the biggest pharmaceutical and medical device companies in the world to two-person startups who are just exploring feasibility options and things like that. We have an amazing team of about 80 staff, most of whom are engineers. We are supporting a number of client projects throughout the area. For startups, we generally are working on getting the quality systems in place to meet GMP requirements and FDA regulations. So we like working with startups. It always is more creative engagement than with the big pharma where you have a very defined role. There's a lot more creativity required in working with startups to get them the right value. We pride ourselves on our speed, flexibility, and excellent return on investment. So that's why people like working with us. We've worked with about 100 companies in our history, and we learn new things on each project. Please contact us if you have any interest. We have a few clients in Wisconsin, and we're pretty excited about the opportunities here. It's a pretty vibrant and growing ecosystem. And I'm also personally interested in working in Wisconsin because my mother is from Madison and my father is from Beaver Dam. And they met at the University of Wisconsin, and they love hearing about Madison. So. I'm looking forward to hearing from our entrepreneurs here. I saw the bios look very impressive, and it sounds like some great, unique company stories that will be the next generation of great companies. So I will turn it back over to Marwa, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. So my name is Marwa Bassiuni, and I lead partnerships and operations at BioForward. I was honored when Lisa asked me not only to help select the startups, but also to moderate today's session. I have spent the past 25 years involved in the biohealth research, innovation, and entrepreneurship space. So it is always such a thrill to showcase founders and companies and their incredible technologies. I'm especially excited to introduce this panel of early-stage companies. Some of these founders I've known for years, and it has been so wonderful to follow their journeys and see what they've accomplished. So each of our presenters will share a bit about their company journey, and then we will have time for questions. I'll ask some questions, and then we want to open it up to the audience and hear from you. So please join me in welcoming our speakers for the 10th annual Startup Showcase. I love the music. So we have Justin Jeffrey, who's the CEO of RPT Labworks. We have, we have Michelle Garsha, CEO of Detect. We have Vivek Swaminathan, CEO of Cardamom Health, and then Victor Santoro Fernandes, CEO of CellTrack. So first we will start off with Justin.
Check. Do I know? Is this working? Check. All right. Sounds good. Set my timer here. All right. Well, I have the privilege of going first. All right. Welcome. And thanks, Lisa, Marwa, for the opportunity to present about our company, RPT Labworks. So RPT, well, let me back up. My name is Justin Jeffrey. I'm the CEO, co-founder of RPT Labworks. So RPT stands for radiopharmaceutical therapeutics. I'll break that down exactly what that means in a couple slides. But first, just want to give a little bit of personal background. This is really guided for entrepreneurs. Can I just ask how many entrepreneurs there are out here? All right, a few. Okay, this is really guided towards you. So there's many ways to kind of get from point A to B, and this is kind of my story very quickly. So come from a not very affluent background in terms of my family. I'm a first-generation college student. Went to the University of Minnesota, got a bachelor's in kinesiology. I'm not exactly sure why, but I did what everyone dreams of doing, and that's to get into construction. And so I did that for about a year and found out very quickly that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that involved using my brain a little bit more. So through nepotism, I was fortunate enough to get a position at the University of Wisconsin, running the small animal imaging and radiotherapy facility, which I did for about 15 years. In fact, still am. Conflict of interest office here. So I got the entrepreneur bug. I started a company, Jeffrey Consulting, just sole proprietor. But that really got me interested in starting more companies. So eventually I then co-founded a company, Theracia. This company, we used non-dilutive funding routes, SBIRs. We were successful at getting a couple SBIRs. And then eventually started Fantech as well. This is a partnership, and we essentially bootstrapped this company. And then finally, most recently, started RPT Labworks, co-founded it, and this is a little bit different path. Had in the process of raising capital for various reasons, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So the point here is just to show there's many different ways to kind of start a company. I've done a few. I don't claim to be an expert in any of these, but kind of the take home here, and something that's very important to me, I don't know when it shows up like that, but I start with a bachelor's. Many people, they go through the process of getting a master's or a PhD, and at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is that you just get shit done, and so that's the GSD, and that's really what I stick to, is just putting my head down, and things, people, processes, policies, regulatory, things are going to get in your way, and you just need to run them over and just keep going, don't quit. I think I recall something like 90% of startups fail. I don't know if I maybe just made that up, but I don't think it's because the company is a failure. I think it's because people give up, because stuff gets very challenging at times, right? And you just got to put your head down and just get shit done. So, onto the company. I probably don't have to convince anybody here the prevalence of cancer. And statistically, sadly, not to get too dark, but half of the people in this room will develop cancer at some point in their life. There's about 2 million cases of cancer in the US alone, and that number is growing about 1% year after year. Fortunately, if we can detect it early enough, stage 1, stage 2, before it becomes metastatic, we have several treatment options: surgery, external beam therapy, chemotherapy, generally leading to very favorable outcomes if you can detect it early enough. Unfortunately, though, if you don't detect it before it becomes metastatic, stage 3, stage 4 cancer, very limited treatment options, chemo, and generally leading to poor outcomes. So in fact, about 600,000 annual cancer deaths occur each year. 90% of those are due to metastatic disease, not the primary tumor. And that's largely because there's limited effective treatment options. So there's a very promising field right now, radiopharmaceutical theranostics, and that's where the RPT comes from. This is a concept that basically combines a vehicle or a ligand or a vector that can be chemically bound to a radionuclide. This is analogous to having like a missile, which is very targeted. We can use missiles and target very specific locations. But the missile in itself is not very effective. You have to add a nuclear warhead to it to actually do the destruction. So what we do is we add the radionuclide to the missile and allow the destruction of cancer. So these are generally safer and more effective because they're targeted and they spare normal tissue. So of course they're intravenously injected into patients, very selective, minimizing normal tissue or normal tissue toxicity. In this example, this image here shows a patient that was given 3 bouts of actinium-225 PSMA, which is, so this patient had prostate cancer, a metastatic disease. 3 treatments, and it completely eradicated the primary and all the metastases. So it's a very powerful tool, and as I mentioned, allows both imaging and therapy. And the term theranostics then comes from this concept. So this type of work has to be done in a CRO like RPT Labworks to do the safety efficacy testing, so ultimately you can go into clinical trials. Most of you, or many of you I should say, are probably familiar with the traditional drug discovery pipeline. I'm just going to speed this up. Really what RPT Labworks does is integrates the radiation and the nuclear, the imaging capabilities, PET, SPECT, CT, and that enables us to accelerate this translation of these drugs to now allow earlier detection, imaging, treatment, and cure of cancer. So again, we're a contract research organization. We serve radiopharma, mid-sized biotech, and startups to develop these radiopharmaceutical drugs. So these, our customers have a biologic or they have some vector that's non-radioactive. They don't have the infrastructure, the know-how. That's my 7-minute timer, so I need to speed up. In order to make these drugs radioactive, that's where we excel. They send the drug to us, we make it radioactive or manufacture the drug. Then we do the testing in animals, in vitro, in vivo testing, and ultimately we put all the data into a preclinical package for IND submission, where the FDA ultimately decides if it's safe to be introduced into humans. We have a very multidisciplinary team. I'll speed this up. What I want to, in the last 2 slides here, just talk about the ecosystem for this particular type of work. A very, very good ecosystem for radiotheranostics. This is kind of just highlight some of the key or the stakeholders in this field. So we have several radiopharmaceutical companies in town, Cellectar, Arceus, Wharf Therapeutics, and even some biologics companies that see the additive or synergistic effect of making their drugs radioactive. We also have very strong ties on the translational side. GE, of course, LabCorp, somebody here from LabCorp, Voximetry, the Cancer Center, of course. We have access to radiation, radioisotopes, Northstar and Shine, for example. And then there's us, and we are one of only a few CROs in the country that focus on radiopharmaceuticals and really specifically for cancer. So again, very quickly about our investment journey. We're not projecting enough revenue, and we're not asking for enough money to go the VC route, so we very quickly eliminated VCs. But we do have traction. We have a minimal viable product, or a service in our case, so we've been able to generate revenue. We have letters of intent. We have supply agreements with radioisotope suppliers, for example, instrumentation suppliers, and then we've also been able to raise some money with friends and family and angels. So it kind of begs the question, well, why don't you guys just bootstrap? Of course, this is a method I'm very familiar with. I've done it a few times. It's just a slower route. And frankly, we have people and facilities and equipment that we need to pay for. And we have customers knocking at the door. So we need to act quickly to kind of be first to market, so to speak. And we continuously run into this problem, the chicken and the egg problem, which is investors like to see you make money, right? But in order to make money, in our case, you need a facility. You need the facility to get the customers because they want to do site visits, and right? And so it's just like this cycle. And so we're now to the point where it's like we've raised enough money, we've identified space, we I could go on. We're going full ahead. Back to my first point is that people are going to get in the way, things are going to get in the way, and just plow forward. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we are anticipating being fully operational in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. Misspoke there. And our strategy here is to, at the same time as we're generating revenue, we're going to be in parallel closing our round. So we've raised about 1/3 of our total round. Still looking for angels. We have multiple strategics that we're in discussions with that are looking very promising. And then, of course, to kind of as a backup, not really backup, but to kind of ease the transition between this kind of hybrid bootstrap raising angel funds, we are relying on venture debt. So anyway, I'm over time, and thanks for your attention.
I'm Michelle Garsha. I'm the CEO of Detect, and I guess the first thing I would say is you have those rare moments in life where you know you are at precisely the right place at the right time, and I would say that is exactly what is happening to me right now as the CEO of this company. I think when you can have these three things come together at one time, you're in a really good position from a startup perspective with a huge unmet clinical need, a differentiated technology, which we have, and then a proven market access strategy, which essentially, as a small company, we're a 35-person company. We don't have the infrastructure to establish guidelines, reimbursement, and really integrate ourselves into the healthcare system. So we're following the coattails of some of the work that I actually did at my previous company, but with a better solution that's right for patients today. So this is our instrument. This is a little 10-inch by 10-inch box that will sit in the clinician's office. And it's the first time I believe that anyone has come up with a technology for diagnostics. This is a molecular diagnostic solution that really meets the needs at point of care when you're in the office. And so in my previous life, I worked for Hologic. My last role there was president of that division. I had the pleasure of working there for 15 years and also building out their molecular strategy. So we started as a small molecular diagnostics division with just one product at Third Wave Technologies, which was a Madison-based company, and that was the division. And my partner, Keith Gantner, who is the COO of Detect with me, is here today. He and I built out a history plan and a pipeline, essentially, that is the Hologic Diagnostics division today, which is the world's largest molecular diagnostics division. And so we understand the space really well, but we're doing a lot of diligence before the end of my time at Hologic on what would be the right tuck-in acquisition for point of care, because we truly believe that for the right targets, you really do need a box that's in the office with the patient so that they can get that answer right away. And these are the key metrics that are really required to make that happen, which no one has really been able to do to date. So no one wants to trade off on accuracy. You have to ensure that you're getting highly accurate results, the same level of quality of result that you would get in a centralized lab. You need the result quickly. Having that result while the patient is still in the office so he or she can leave with a prescription or a treatment is ideal. Multiplexing, you want to be able to test for multiple things. It has to be really simple, so it's CLIA waived, so anyone in the office can run that test itself. And then obviously you want it to have a low number of erroneous results or indeterminate results, so it has to be reproducible, and it has to be inexpensive. It has to fit into our existing infrastructure. Payers aren't going to want to pay more for a test at the site of service, unfortunately, so the cost has to be low so that it can still be profitable. And then designing the instrument and the cartridge itself so that you can run a breadth of tests on it are all the foundational principles that this company was based on. When we look a little bit at the market landscape, this is what it looks like today. So for diagnostics, it's a huge market, $58 billion market, but you can see that the majority of the testing happens in centralized labs, whether that's a lab that's at the hospital that the sample gets sent out to, whether that's a regional reference lab or your large national labs like Quest and LabCorp. That's still where the majority of testing is done today. A small percent of testing is done in the physician's office. And these are the reasons on the right for why a lot of that testing hasn't been moved to the site of service. Two I would call out are the capital intensity. The instruments that we sold at Hologic, they can be upwards of $1 million. So the capital barrier to entry is really something that has to be considered. I will tell you our instrument has COGS of $2,500, so we overcame that with really innovative design. And then the technical and operational complexity. Again, it has to be able to be run by anyone. They're highly skilled technicians that run these instruments in these centralized labs, this test can be done by really anyone. It's CLIA waived. And then that turnaround time, acceptability, and relevant menu. I've seen some companies who probably have a technology that could check some of these boxes, but they went after the wrong targets. There has to be a true motivation for the patient and the physician to really want this test in the physician's office. And that's why we're targeting vaginitis. Vaginitis is a huge market. It's a market that we developed at Hologic, and this is where time really matters. You can imagine if you have the flu or COVID, which are two conditions that have been moved and largely decentralized into the physician's office or close to the patient. You're sick, you're not feeling well, you want that answer right away. Vaginitis is the same thing. You have a vaginal infection, you've been suffering, you go to your physician. What you don't want to happen is to have that sample be sent out, and this is what happens today. And if you want a highly accurate test, that sample is sent out, it's on a plane, train, automobile, and a couple of days later, you get that accurate answer to what is going on. And you can see that there's a variety of symptoms that cause a variety of things that, that need to be discriminated between with a highly accurate molecular test. And so our test looks for bacterial vaginosis, candidiasis, and trichomonas. That's the standard of care. This is the largest growing molecular market, but all of this testing today is happening in the centralized lab. So we intend to take this large market, which I think will be the largest molecular market in a few short months, and decentralize this into the physician's office. From a financial perspective, it gets really exciting when you look at the financials of this business. So on the left side, you can see the paradigm financially that exists today. So suppliers, which would be a centralized Roche, Hologic, any molecular diagnostic supplier, get a small percentage of the overall reimbursement or dollars that come in from an economic perspective. The lab takes most of that. They have to run the test, they have to submit for reimbursement. And so, you would sell a test like this today for about $35, $40 if you were a centralized supplier. By cutting out the centralized lab, and I'm sorry to LabCorp, whoever's here from LabCorp, but by cutting out the centralized lab, you garner a lot more of the economics yourself. So the physicians also get in on the economics of this, so they're going to be submitting for reimbursement. We fully intend to be supporting those physicians in that journey, as it's not always easy, and we understand that side well. But then obviously you get a lot more of the overall economics. The reimbursement for this test is about $250. Our price per test will be somewhere around what you see in there for Detect. And then on the right side, you see from a business case perspective in diagnostics, having been in this world for 20 years, this is the best business case I've ever seen. You can see with a small penetration of the market, a little more than 1% market share, we would estimate about $31 million of annual revenue, and then going up from there. It has margins that are phenomenal, above 50%. We expect that to actually be even greater. And then at the bottom, when you can line up value for all stakeholders, it's obviously the best case scenario and a lot easier way to penetrate the market. This is our plan in terms of our future menu as well. We're going to start with vaginitis. We think chlamydia and gonorrhea make a lot of sense just based on the patient population that would be coming in. But then we plan to go after UTIs, a huge unmet need. This is going to need a little market access work and market development, which is why it's not the next test in our pipeline. But we believe that we can not only detect the type of infection you have, but also guide treatment. And then the hormone market, which has a huge unmet need, whether it's PCOS, endometriosis, or perimenopause and menopause. There's just a huge unmet need and a greater awareness just generally of the need for understanding your hormone levels, and a lot more hormone and endocrine disruptors that exist in our environment today. So that's a place we really want to go. So you see a focus on women's health, but obviously we intend to do more than that, or this platform has the opportunity to do more than that. From an investment perspective, we have the benefit, I guess, of $200 million of previous investment that went into this technology. So this company started as a COVID technology in an incubator, and it was a home test. But they did a lot of fantastic work and honestly made all the right decisions to pivot into a platform that could be used in the physician's office. We recapitalized the company, so we are now in a Series A investment, raising $35 million. We have about $9 million, we have more than $9 million in the bank right now, and several investors in the mix. Our current round is being led by Eldridge, Foresight, and Glenview, who are PE and VC firms. This is our plan to go to market. So we're getting ready for our clinical study right now. So we intend to be starting our clinical study sometime between March and June of this year, and then be on market in 2027 with our first product. I would say the greatest benefit I have, in addition to the technology, is a phenomenal team. It was the reason why I joined this company. It's been about a year since I've been there, but to have this breadth of talent, some of which Keith and I brought to the table, but just highly skilled people. I'll just point out one person, Bob McNamee. He was the quality person who was at the company. We just got ISO certification, which for any of you who know that is a huge obstacle. He basically did that single-handedly. Just all people with fantastic experience, from Quest GM of Women's Health to Labcorp, a person who developed the first vaginitis test as an LDT. Tiago, who's our supply chain manager, really understands supply chain, soup to nuts and operations. Spencer, brilliant innovator. We have about 12 patents now that are associated with our technology. And then a really great finance person as well. All key leaders of the small 35-person team that make up Detect. Thank you. This is my email.
All right, hopefully you all can hear me. I'm gonna try to go fast so we have plenty of time for questions at the end and for Victor here. So I'm the CEO of Cardamom Health. My name is Vivek Swaminathan. Think of us as just a data analytics applications. We're tech-enabled services. So you probably heard that a million times in terms of those buzzwords. So I'm gonna try at least get into what we do, but I'm gonna say it always starts with people. That's how I think of business. And so I put our leadership team up here first. This is how I think we've been successful as a startup and to where we are today, early stage. I've known all of these folks in some way, shape, or form in my past life or in past roles. And a lot of them know each other. It allows us to go very quickly. We have a lot of trust. We're able to make decisions quickly, and we're able to all wear a lot of different hats as we grow. So that has been the key to everything, is to have an amazing team. We are trying to make sure we have multiple missions. One is certainly about maximizing value for healthcare organizations through data, through technology, but another is to really make an impact on our communities and to give people an opportunity or a chance they would otherwise not get. So we do a lot in terms of supporting and growing people, giving them chances to get into new areas, and we create a culture that's really about that, about trying new things, experimenting. If we make mistakes, that's okay. We have the right people to figure it out and support it and move us forward. A very collaborative environment so we can continue to do more as our customers need more, because this world is changing and it's changing quickly, and we need to make sure that we're ahead, if not just right there with them as time progresses. If you think about what exactly we do, it's, a lot of it is around advisory type work, working closely with organizations. A lot of it is around AI or managed services, keeping the lights on long-term things. We're able to go deep on various use cases where most of our customers have different challenges, especially when you're working with a health system directly, and where they are in their journey really matters. So we can pay a lot of attention to what exactly they need and where they're going and sort of craft a solution. But everything needs to be repeatable. So we have intellectual property. A lot of it is what we do in the AI space. We do a whole bunch. We do large language model things. We create chatbots. We do predictive. Really, we're trying to help eliminate a lot of the waste, not necessarily just people or something like that. You always hear that with AI, but a lot of it is process. It is decision making. It is getting the right information, the right data in the right places so that we can make informed decisions. There are a lot of people who do chunks of what we do. I think what makes us different is that we kind of do it all. We have this group that has high expertise. We do this team-based approach. So you have deep technologists. You have people who are very comfortable with hospital or health system operations. You've got folks that really just understand how to work with these groups to focus on outcomes and results, because so much of what happens is really churn. And a lot of times we work with organizations and they've spent a lot of money, and at the end of it, they don't really know what they have. There wasn't some tangible thing that they could talk about. So we do a lot to focus on those results. Our journey, I'll just kind of sum up with this slide. It's been a long. We've been doing this for about 3 years. We did more of the friends and family with safes early on to get the money we needed in the door. A lot of what we do needs that R&D component. It needs sort of long-term thinking instead of trying to find people that can work part-time here and there when you don't really have the revenue in the early days. So we had to make a lot of those upfront investments. So we were able to bring friends and family. Our leaders have invested, as you go. That really got us to that Series Seed. So we did take a Series Seed in Q2 2024. So that helped get us through this next big push. And now we've had another big growth. So we're over 100 people now. We're working across 40 customers. So we have another big inflection point that we need to be thinking about. So right now we are again looking at Series A. Should we be raising more? We're trying to figure out how to do it strategically. The goal is not to have a bunch of dilution. The goal is really to accelerate our growth when we have a market opportunity, when we know that there's a market fit and we know there's a lot of demand. Now is the time, in our opinion, to look at what's out there and see if it makes sense. So that's it for me. My contact information's up there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victor. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and present CellTrack to you. In CellTrack, we're revolutionizing the development of cell therapies. So that's the stage. That's what I'm going to be discussing here, cell therapies. But I'm going to draw a lot from Justin's talk because what we're doing is bringing radiation to cell therapies, which sounds kind of crazy, and it's a nightmare from the logistical point of view, but bear with me and you see how this changes the whole development game. One of the questions, the main questions as I go out and talk to companies developing cell therapies, small, medium pharmaceutical companies with an asset or two that they know it's very promising, is they want to know where the cells are going after they are injected in a patient's body. And that's because cell therapy is a targeted therapy. You have engineered cell, has a target, and it needs to go there, it needs to stay there, it needs to infiltrate. If it's a tumor, solid tumor, it needs to infiltrate the solid tumor in order to have its therapeutic effect in the clinic. So in a preclinical study nowadays, if you want to know where your cell therapy is going, that's what you do. Injection, euthanasia, organ excision, digestion, tissue assay, and finally you get to your information, right? So it's laborious, it's a highly specialized task, and I heard from the directors of cell therapy development that it kind of ties up their team for a big time. It's kind of a hassle, but and also because it's so convoluted, not a lot of companies developing cell therapeutics are doing it. Yet, as I talk to these people, all of them want to know where their cells are going. Just also on another note, if you go to clinical trials, then it's even more complicated, right? Because there's no euthanasia in clinical trials, and biopsies are impractical, and from a clinical point of view, people try to avoid them. So that's where I'm getting, right? Imaging precludes this complexity. That's what we're proposing. So you inject cells, and then you get a PET scan, and you have spatially resolved multiple time points, every organ information for tumor trafficking, infiltration, and you also need fewer animals because you can take one cohort of animals, bring it all down to your preclinical study pipeline, right? And that's with mice. We also have data that show feasibility of this approach in monkeys. So what you're seeing here is 30 minutes, 1, 3, and 7 days of in vivo cell biodistribution, right? But then how do you do that? And this is our secret sauce. This is our play. It's a very big IP play. We have developed methods. So the company is a spin-off of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So we developed and patented a strategy to add a radionuclide. That's how we can get the PET image, right? So to add a radionuclide to a cell, so we can get the injection and the PET scan in a way that's 100 times more efficient than any other imaging method previously established. So that's what enables that this technology is used commercially, right? When you have something that's 100 times less trackable than what we have, then it's a good academic exercise, but it's not really feasible in the commercial place. Yeah, so a little bit about the team. Founding team is myself and Rainier. Rainier is a radiochemist and is kind of a wizard when it comes to radiochemist, world leader, super clever. Developed the technology in his lab, and now I got my PhD here at Wisconsin-Madison Medical Physics, and I specialize in nuclear medicine, molecular imaging analysis, right? So Rainier's more generating the images, and I have the expertise in analyzing quantitative, putting numbers to an image and understanding what's the meaning of the image long term in a predictive modeling scenario. I'm just putting my academic hat here and losing myself. Anyways, that's the size of the problem. I just wanted to show, because that's what motivates us to really tackle this. It's a really big number, I know it is a really big number. It's not my TAM or anything, it's just the size of the problem. It's a very simple math equation though. It's 400 trials per year in the clinical, in the cell therapy development. These trials cost $1 billion, and then 90% of them fail. And solid tumor is the next frontier in cell therapies, as I was saying. And when you go look at the data, you see that these trials are failing because of trafficking problems, not because of effectiveness problems. So it works in the lab, but it doesn't work in an animal. Yeah, so the traction of the company, we're early on. We completed 150 plus customer discovery interviews to see who our customer would be. That generated 3 signed letters of intent with industry partners, and we're now running pilot projects with them. There are also 2 academic centers that we identified that are interested in using our technology for investigator-initiated clinical trials. And our pre-seed round is open. We're raising, and we're also exploring non-dilutive grant funding. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Is this on? Okay, perfect. So I wanted to start with just asking each of you like a question, and then we'll go into a little bit about fundraising, and then we can open it up to the audience. But Victor, I wanted to start with you. I know you kind of touched upon it in your presentation, but when you're at UW, and so at what point did you realize that you had a technology that could be commercialized, and as you talked to other people, when did you realize that you had something that you wanted to start a company?
Right, that's a very good question. So I was very lucky and very fortunate to be the inaugural entrepreneurial fellow in the medical physics department. So it's a postdoctoral fellowship with the focus in entrepreneurship. And one exercise that I've done, and I really liked yesterday, it was said here in this forum that a patent in the shelf was worth nothing, right? I mean, maybe that's an overstatement, but you really gotta go understand if these patents can be developed and generate, licensing agreements or companies. So what I did as part of my fellowship is I sat down, went through the list of medical physics and radiology patents that have been filed and have not been licensed. So they're just sitting on a shelf. There are 120 of those. And I identified this one I was looking for 3 things. It's okay. I was looking for 3 things. I was looking for a very clear value proposition from the science point of view, and then 100 times better imaging. That was it. I was looking for a good or a PI that I knew would be receptive to starting a company with. And then, of course, I was looking for something that's within my expertise, and that's how I landed on this patent. Now, one thing is the science value of it, and then you really go out and talk to 150 plus possible customers to understand if the commercial value is there. And in the case of this technology, we just, it ends up, you go with very many hypotheses and you set on one that's the most promising. So that's how I did it, or we did it.
Great, thank you for sharing that. So Vivek, I wanted to ask you, and we heard this in the earlier discussion from Tim, the first session, keynote session. He talks about, there's so much interest in companies that are in the AI space. And so I'm curious for you and your company, and if you were talking to somebody that is looking to start a company in the AI space, like what do you think you would tell them to help set you apart in such a large field right now where everybody's looking, the buzzword, right? AI. So if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, happy to. I think first, what do you mean by AI? A lot of people like to use that term, and is it really AI? We talk a lot about pragmatic AI. What are you using it for in the day-to-day? I happen to be a person that thinks AI is to some degree a commodity, like Gen AI is a commodity. Whichever one you use, does it really matter? What really matters is the data underneath it. Are you bringing the right data sets together? Are you using that in some meaningful way such that you can drive something, drive a behavior, drive an outcome? And if you can do that, can you do that in a way that's then difficult for other people to do, right? There are a lot of things right now that are out there in the market that were created years ago and were probably super relevant and unique and had these barriers to entry then that just don't now. And so if somebody else can build it very quickly, can you charge much for it? Is it really gonna last? So you have to kind of look forward and think about where we're gonna be 2, 3, 4 years from now before you go spend a ton of money on R&D. So we've been trying to be a lot more aligned towards what our customers need and focusing more on those use cases so that we are relevant for a longer period of time. So I would just think about all those things and what barrier to entry really looks like right now.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, I have a question for you about Wisconsin and coming to Wisconsin. So I know you were based in Madison, but your company was founded on the East Coast in Connecticut. And so as you're raising money and looking to bring the company to Wisconsin, can you talk a little bit about why you would want to do that and what is enticing about coming to Madison, besides the Badgers, but
And the Packers.
and the Packers. Okay.
No. So I guess, I was part of the biotech community here in Madison at Third Wave Technologies back in 2000. So the rich infrastructure of talent that exists, I think, largely from the university. And I shouldn't say that I don't have that. I mean, I'm very close to Yale, but where this company was founded is very much what I would call a bedroom community. It's not, I think it will be difficult to attract the caliber of talent and the scale of employees that we would need from that location. So it really is having a biotech hub that is Madison, but with a lot of available, highly skilled and talented employees. And just from a cultural perspective, having worked here too, I worked on the East Coast, I worked on the West Coast, and I worked here in the Midwest. I loved the culture we were able to build within the team from talent from Wisconsin, personally.
Thank you. So Justin, for you, I have a question around, you talked about how, you're looking to move into your new space. And so I'm curious, as you were thinking about it, at what point did you decide you needed to find the space? How did you find this space? What were some of the requirements you were looking for? And especially here in Madison.
Yeah, is this on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, frankly, the customers knocking on the door is what kind of kept us motivated to keep trying to push forward and find the space. So I don't want to get into all the details. There's some reason for this, but I've been talking to multiple locations about spaces, and I'm telling you, it is difficult. Some are very particular about who they want in their space and how much money you have. I mean, some have done more due diligence in terms of sorry, I'm blanking here. Anyway, they've done more due diligence than the investors, actually, in terms of trying to ensure we have enough funding to live out the lease. So, but anyway, to get back to the point, it's the customers have been driving this initiative because, if I'm being honest, we've been using academic sites to generate some of the revenue that we have, but we've also lost many contracts because we are using university resources. And, big pharma are not oftentimes very fond of the idea of using academic resources because of issues with IP primarily, but also issues with turnaround time and quality of data, which is ultimately the impetus for why we started this business to begin with. So, yeah, so anyway, so just customers knocking on the door is constantly what's driving us to like, we need to get our facility and we need to do it now.
Thank you. I have more questions, but I want to open it up to the audience, see if there are any questions from the audience.
Hi. Okay, I think it's on. It was really cool hearing about all of your different companies and how diverse they are and things like that. I'm wondering about how you guys think about recruiting talent in Wisconsin, and what types of roles and like degree levels you look for in each of your diverse companies.
I guess I can go first. We hire a lot. I mean, look, we are not a Madison-only company. We have about 1/3 of our employees here and about 2/3 across the country. So some of it is figuring out what needs to be physically here versus what doesn't. And when it doesn't, be open to LinkedIn and all these other sort of national platforms or worldwide platforms, really. So I think that's sort of part one. Part two is, I mean, we have a very strong healthcare market, period, across everything, and we have a pretty strong IT market. I know, the Chamber and others have done a lot of great work here in the Madison area, so we have not had a lot of struggles. It helps to have the university, it helps to have Epic, and it helps to have Exact Sciences and others that have a ton of people here, so we haven't had a ton of issues. The other thing I will say, though, is making sure, I mean, for us, having good relationships with folks we've worked with in the past and maintaining and keeping those relationships has been critical. So many of the folks that want to work for us or have joined us are ones that we worked with before and we've just stayed in touch with, and they've been interested in what we're doing next. And I've been sort of floored by how many more people want to work with us than I thought would, just because apparently we all made good impressions on each other back in the past.
I can add, sorry. I can add, so in radiopharmaceutical theranostics, it's a very niche space, so the talent pool is actually quite small. So kind of follow up on what Vivek said.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're, and I think I'm maybe even speaking for Victor a little bit here too, because it is such a niche space, especially as a startup, it's very important that these initial employees are people that we know and we trust. And so our strategy has been talking to people that we have been working with over many years, right? So, and then after these initial employees, and of course we're gonna have to broaden kind of the talent pool that we're trying to pull in. But the only other thing I'll mention is because this biotech space here is growing, particularly for radiopharmaceutical theranostics, I'm hoping that as it grows, like you see North Star's got, I don't know, several hundred people now that didn't have radio backgrounds before, but now they do, and even LabCorp. I mean, these are sad for them, but I mean, we frankly hope to poach some of these people in the next few years, so.
Yeah, for me, it's see, as you picked up from the presentation, I'm earlier stage than anyone else here. So you raise and then you hire, right? So there's that, and that's a problem that every entrepreneur needs to deal with at some point, or not, right? Because you have your equity. But then your problem becomes if you're bringing someone on board for equity, then this person needs to be a ride or die, and they need to come with the expertise that you need. It's not just somebody that you like. It needs to be really something you need, and it's very clear for our company right now what we're looking at. That's a very good forum to say that somebody that would be interested to come on with a lot of cell biology and cell therapy expertise, because, well, the play, it's the radiochemistry, cells, and medical imaging. So we're pretty covered on two of them. So we're missing one. We have names in mind, right? But we're trying to generate with our pilots. We're trying to generate the momentum we need to attract good quality people. Yeah. And it's great to be in Madison for that. Madison is exquisite for most of the things that we're discussing here.
Thank you. I have a question about fundraising. That's always literally the $1 million question. So I know some of you have been actively fundraising, and I'm sure you heard no more than you'd care to share. Can you talk about, what keeps you going? How do you respond to that? What were some of the things you heard from investors that passed on this opportunity?
I'll start. So I guess I naively went into fundraising, having never done it before. So I'd always worked in the corporate environment and saw the business case in front of us, and we were just like, this is going to be a slam dunk, so easy. Like, come on, everyone's going to just throw money at us, and that's not at all what happened. But I think staying true and really knowing that you have a really good plan and a really good business, and just like being resilient through the no's and augmenting your strategy a little bit along the way. I mean, what we were running up against is just we're in this regulated space that there's a long lead time before you start generating revenue, and we saw the risk profile of a lot of investors switch to wanting revenue stage companies to invest in, which just wasn't us. So it was really highlighting networking and just, like I said, being resilient, having hundreds of conversations. But eventually the tide turned, and yeah, it's all kind of happening at one time now. So happy to be here.
Sure, I can add. I'm like a traditional Midwestern person, and not a lot of hand waving, I guess, and like selling is just not like in our nature, I think, oftentimes. And so you almost have to like play the game, is what I've learned, which is, if I'm being honest, is the thing I hate about raising money. So yeah, I've been through a lot of ups and downs. I can talk off the record a little bit more. We've had strategics, lost strategics, multiple times. You need to be very, very calculated on who you pick as a strategic. And then I think probably a couple pieces of advice I'll just fire off here is like when you have a strategic or like a lead, don't stop with that lead. Keep firing more. You need to increase your reach outs and your pitching, and just you cannot settle, because some will see weakness and they will kind of leverage that their position, right? So you need to be very aggressive. Don't stop being aggressive and just keep going. 2, I would say get outside this ecosystem. Don't just rely on just one ecosystem. Very, very smart investors here. The only problem is it's a very small community. And I can only encourage you to go outside the ecosystem. It's also talk to the investors in this ecosystem, but don't just rely on a single ecosystem. Maybe those are the 2 best things that I would say. I have a lot more to say, but I don't want to put myself in deep water here. So,
yeah, I guess I can go next, and I'll build off what you said. I think the biggest thing for me is don't raise when you're desperate. That's too late. You got to be thinking about that ahead of time, and make sure you're fostering these relationships and having these conversations. A lot of these groups are used to having long relationships before that they're going to put anything in. And even though they're risky in a lot of ways, they're really very conservative. And so you really need to be able to sell, like you were talking about, but I really believe those stories only sell if you have a lot of data to back it. And so being all over your data and using that to tell your story based off whether it's addressable market, it's your past, there's a lot of data points that you can bring into play, and you just have to have that be a pretty tight message. And then, talk to as many types of people as you can, because there are good fits and there are bad fits, and you gotta find, if you're not able to discern good versus bad, you're probably not talking to enough investors.
Yeah. I sat through countless panels of investors and of founders, and I always knew the day would come that I would join the choir of saying what I'm gonna say next. That is, it's all about relationships, right? You hear everybody say that it's all about relationships. So your question was, when you hear no, what do you do? Well, you just look at this as part of your relationship building, right? And the no comes with a reason. So you got to be clever to decide if the reason is a made-up one or a real one. And the better the investors you're talking with, the more likely the reasons are going to be the real ones. And then you just take it to heart and work on it. You know, like there are some things you cannot fix, and then it's a pivot. But then everything else you just work on, and then you keep building the relationships.
Right, those are amazing answers. I'll open it up to the audience again. Questions? Okay, I have more. I'm just checking on time too. So I wanted to ask each of you if you could talk about, especially as you mentioned, we have an amazing ecosystem here in Wisconsin and in the Midwest, but you know, with Forward Biolabs, with BioForward, you know, and the university. So if you could talk a little, if you were talking to somebody, an entrepreneur, somebody entering the startup space, what are some of the resources that were really valuable to you? Just advice and any piece of advice you could give them.
Early Mentor is really good, just to be very practical. And the reason is, if you don't know, it's a Madison community based, so it's not tied to the university. Mentorship for entrepreneurs, and then that's what's great about it. It's mentorship for the entrepreneur, not for the business. So I can't recommend it enough. And maybe if you're here, Merlin is amazing. Take advantage of it. If you're not, that's what I recommend for any entrepreneur, right? Like get a team to mentor you, and then you work on the business with other people.
Yeah, for us, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, WDC, has been a great partner to us from day one. So, you know, we also have the MDC, Madison Development Corporation, as a partner, but WDC in particular has been pretty involved.
And then you know, my company isn't Madison-based yet, but just having been here and lived here, been a lifelong Wisconsinite, just reaching out to my network of professionals in this space and having, like yourself, and introductions to people investing in the Wisconsin community or in the biotech space has been incredibly helpful and generated a lot of warm leads that have turned into investors.
Yeah, I would say with the WEDC getting the QNVB certification, or I guess you can call it certification. That was the only thing I was going to add. So.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. Talk to a lot of startups, younger companies. They always talk about pivots. So for you, what's a pivot that you've gone through progression? Thank you.
I can start because we went through a pretty massive one. We started as a COVID company with an at-home PCR COVID test. And so when the test ended up being too expensive, the market started declining, and the cost of the test to manufacture it was actually greater than the consumer would pay for it. That all preceded me, but the company made a pivot. They had invented a lot of really great technologies during that period of time. Honestly, they went from nothing to a technology in 18 months, which is pretty phenomenal for a group of engineers and biochemists that had never built a diagnostic test before. But when they pivoted, they took all of the learnings that they had along the way. And they also utilized AI in the entire development process, which was the first time in my lifetime that I'd seen that happen. And that's the reason why I joined. I saw that these critical insights that you don't find in a market research report were adapted by these engineers, and they designed it into the technology that I think now will be a category defining platform.
I would say you should always expect to have to pivot at some time, and it should not be a surprise to you. So my mentality is always have plan A, B, C, D, E. So when you do have to pivot, you're just ready to turn it on the next day, right? So you have to almost anticipate. the areas where you may have to pivot. I haven't had any on the technical side, no major pivots. We are, just to give you an example, our beachhead market here is oncology, radiopharmaceutical oncology. But we're prepared to expand or pivot to cardio, neuro, and other indications. So that's just an example of just anticipate kind of where the pivot points are, and then just be ready, because it's most likely going to happen. So most of my pivoting has been on the fundraising side, which I've already kind of alluded to, so I won't say anymore.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot, anything I would call a big pivot. All of ours have been the smaller variety, and that's, whether it's who our operational partners are, which customers we really are seeing traction with, and that ideal customer profile. I think other than the contingency plans, which I think are very important, I think having that continuous evaluation and seeing what's working and what isn't, what's working but not enough, that might be just a bunch of noise or isn't worth the effort. You also have to have the willingness to say no to and make some shifts there.
Yeah. I had a big pivot in this whole journey, because I started a whole entrepreneurial postdoctoral fellowship pursuing a different IP, and then something about the IP made it such that I realized midway it would be a hill I was not willing to fight on. And that's when I go back to the beginning and scout the IPs like I was describing before. That's more of a me pivot. For this new company, for CellTrack, I like what you said. I think we haven't had to pivot because we, up until now, understood that when you start, you considered many possibilities, and then as you gather evidence, as you talk to people and the data comes in, you see what's more compelling, has more traction, and then you just define that you're going to go there. So it's, think about more just like finding your way, and that's how it has been for us thus far. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. Any other, we're over time. Any other last minute questions? Well, thank you everyone for coming to the 10th Annual Startup Showcase, and thank you to our panelists. They're going to stick around for any questions if you'd like to come up and talk to them. Thank you again.